The Sabines were a fundamental people in the history of Rome, but few people know their true importance. They were not just neighbors of the Romans. Their culture, traditions, and even their conflicts helped shape the future of the city that would dominate the world. But not everything was peaceful. There was tension, battles, and an event that could have changed the fate of Rome forever. The Romans had to make a bold decision to ensure their survival, and the Sabines ended up playing a pivotal role in the formation of Roman society. In this story, you will discover how a warrior people with roots that go back to the legendary Sparta profoundly influenced Rome and left a legacy that would last for centuries. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, take advantage now to join our community. Every interaction you make makes this space more special. Imagine a people so powerful and influential that, even without founding Rome, they helped shape the destiny of one of the greatest empires in history. Who were these mysterious individuals, and how did their traditions and beliefs intertwine with the foundations of the Eternal City? The Sabines, an ethnic group that inhabited the Italian peninsula long before Rome came into being, were much more than just neighbors of the early Romans. They were fearless warriors, devout priests, and above all, guardians of a rich and complex culture that would leave a profound mark on Roman history. The Sabines lived in the hills surrounding what would later become Rome, in a region known for its fertility and strategic location. Their society was organized around family clans, each led by a powerful chief. They were not only farmers and herders, but also skilled warriors, known for their bravery in battle. Religion played a central role in their lives, with rituals and ceremonies honoring gods associated with nature, war, and fertility. This combination of militarism and spirituality made the Sabines a unique people whose influence would extend far beyond their borders. By the time Rome was founded around the 8th century BC, the Sabines were already an established presence in the region. The early kings of Rome, including the legendary Romulus, recognized the importance of the Sabines and sought to establish ties with them. This was not simply a political or military alliance, but a cultural fusion that would enrich both societies. The Sabines brought with them religious traditions that were incorporated into the Roman pantheon, such as the worship of gods such as Quirinius, who would later be associated with Romulus himself. In addition, their military and organizational practices influenced the formation of the Roman army, which would become one of the most feared forces in the ancient world. A fascinating example of this influence can be seen in the figure of Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome, who was of Sabine origin. Numa is remembered as a wise and pious ruler who introduced religious and social reforms that helped stabilize the young city. He established many of the religious rituals and institutions that would become central to Roman identity, including the office of Pontifex Maximus, who oversaw public worship. Numa's wisdom and his connection to the Sabine traditions show how essential the culture of these people was to the development of Rome. But the relationship between the Sabines and the Romans was not always harmonious. Conflicts and rivalries were common, especially in the early years of Rome. However, even in these disputes, the Sabines left their mark. Their resilience and determination forced the Romans to adapt and evolve, creating a dynamic that drove the growth of both societies. The history of the Sabines is therefore a story of encounters and disagreements, of alliances and conflicts, which ultimately shaped the destiny of Rome. And here an intriguing question arises. How did a people who never directly ruled Rome manage to exert so much influence over it? The answer may lie in the Sabines' ability to adapt and integrate without losing their identity. They were not passively conquered. Instead, they actively participated in the construction of a new society, bringing with them their traditions and values. This ability to influence without dominating is perhaps the Sabines' greatest legacy. But the story doesn't end there. If the SABINES were so important, why was their presence gradually erased from historical memory? And how did their traditions survive and evolve over the centuries? These are the questions that lead us to the next chapter of this fascinating tale, where we will explore the possible connection between the SABINES and Sparta, and how this connection may have further shaped the destiny of Rome. What do you think? Were the SABINES just one people among many, or were they the true architects of Rome's success? The answer may surprise you. Have you found this interesting? Leave a like to let me know you like this type of content. What if the SABINES, these people so central to the formation of Rome, were descendants of Spartans? Just imagine, fugitive warriors from the legendary Sparta, carrying with them not only their swords, but also a culture of discipline and honor that would help shape the future of one of history's greatest civilizations. This theory, though shrouded in mystery and debate, offers a fascinating insight into the origins of the SABINES and their influence on Rome. Could the SABINES actually have been Spartans who found a new home on the Italian peninsula? The idea of a connection between the SABINES and the Spartans is not new, but it gains traction when we consider the cultural similarities between the two peoples. Sparta, known for its militarized society and the strict laws imposed by Lycurgus, was a model of discipline and organization. The Spartans valued courage, loyalty, and austerity, traits that were also prominent among the SABINES. Could it be that a group of Spartans, dissatisfied with the restrictions of their society, migrated to Italy and gave rise to the SABINES? Some historians suggest that this migration may have occurred during a period of turmoil in Sparta, when Lycurgus's strict laws led to internal conflict and the expulsion of dissenters. These exiles, seeking a new beginning, would have followed trade or migration routes that took them to the Italian peninsula. There, they found fertile land and a strategic location, perfect for establishing a new society. Adapting to the new environment would not have been easy, but the Spartan values of discipline and organization would have helped the SABINES to prosper. One of the most intriguing aspects of this theory is the similarity between the military practices of the SABINES and the Spartans. Both peoples valued rigorous training and efficiency in combat. The SABINES, like the Spartans, were known for their ability to form phalanxes, a military formation that required coordination and discipline. In addition, the emphasis on military education and preparation for war was a striking feature of both cultures. Is this a coincidence or evidence of a deeper connection? Religion also offers interesting clues. The SABINES worshipped gods linked to nature and war, such as Mars and Quirinus, who had counterparts in the Greek pantheon. Mars, for example, was associated with Ares, the Greek god of war, while Quirinus could be compared to Heracles, the deified hero. These similarities suggest a possible cultural exchange between the SABINES and Greeks, including the Spartans. Furthermore, the SABINE rituals, which involved sacrifices and public ceremonies, echo Spartan religious practices known for their solemnity and rigor. But the theory of a link between the SABINES and Spartans is not consensual. Many scholars argue that the similarities may be the result of broader cultural influences rather than direct migration. After all, the Italian peninsula was a melting pot of cultures, where Etruscans, Greeks, and other peoples interacted and exchanged ideas. In this context, the SABINES could have assimilated Spartan elements without necessarily descending from them. However, the idea of a direct connection continues to fascinate. Imagine the SABINES as heirs to the Spartan tradition, bringing with them not only military techniques, but also an ethos of discipline and honor that would help shape Rome. This influence would be especially evident during the first centuries of Rome, when the city was consolidating itself as a regional power. SABINE discipline, inherited from the Spartans, would have been crucial to the formation of the Roman army, which would later conquer much of the known world. And here a provocative question arises. If the Sabines were indeed descendants of Spartans, why is this connection not more widely known? Did the Romans, in their effort to build a unique identity, downplay the Sabine and, by extension, Spartan influence? Or has the story simply been lost to time, leaving only fragments that we can attempt to reconstruct? This reflection leads us to the next chapter of this fascinating narrative, where we will see how the Sabines and Romans came together in a dramatic and unexpected way, through an event that would forever change the course of history: the rape of the Sabine women. What happened when these two peoples, so different and so similar, met on the battlefield and, finally, in union? The answer may surprise you. Is there anything that has left an impression on you so far? Share it in the comments. Your insight is important. Imagine a grand party, filled with guests from different backgrounds, where joy and celebration hide an audacious plan that would change the destiny of two nations forever. It was in the midst of this atmosphere of apparent harmony that Romulus, the founder of Rome, decided to solve one of the greatest problems of his young city: the lack of women. What followed was one of the most dramatic and controversial episodes in ancient history: the rape of the Sabine women. But was this event just an act of desperation or a calculated strategy to unite two peoples and create a powerful nation? The story of the rape of the Sabine women begins with a challenge that Rome faced in its early years. The newly founded city attracted men of all backgrounds: refugees, adventurers, exiles, but there was a shortage of women. Without families to ensure the continuity of the population, Rome was in danger of disappearing before it could even flourish. It was then that Romulus had a radical idea: to invite the Sabines, a neighboring people known for their strength and traditions, to a great festival in honor of the god Consus. The Sabines, curious and perhaps unprepared, accepted the invitation and attended in large numbers, bringing with them their wives and children. What they did not know was that the festival was just a distraction. At a prearranged signal, the Romans attacked the Sabine women, capturing them and taking them into the city. Chaos ensued, and the Sabines, overcome with fury, swore revenge. But the rape of the Sabine women was not just an act of violence. Romulus, known for his cunning, had a bigger plan in mind. He offered the Sabine women rights and protection, integrating them into Roman society as wives and mothers. This strategy not only solved Rome's demographic problem, but also created family ties between Romans and Sabines, which would be crucial to the future unification of the two peoples. The Sabines' reaction, however, was immediate and furious. Under the leadership of Titus Tatius, their king, they declared war on Rome. The conflicts that followed were bloody and prolonged, with both sides demonstrating bravery and determination. But at a crucial moment, the Sabine women themselves intervened. They had been kidnapped and were now torn between their loyalty to their ancestral families and their new ties to the Romans. In a moving scene, the Sabine women stood between the rival armies, begging for an end to the war. They argued that if the men continued to fight, they would lose not only their wives and mothers, but also their children, who were the fruit of the union between the two peoples. This emotional appeal had a profound impact, leading to the reconciliation between the Romans and the Sabines. The result was a unique and powerful merger. Titus Tatius and Romulus agreed to rule Rome together, creating a co-regency that symbolized the union of the two peoples. The Sabines brought with them their traditions, religion, and military expertise, enriching Roman culture and strengthening its social structure. This fusion not only ensured Rome's survival, but also laid the foundation for its future expansionism. But the rape of the Sabine women was not just a historical event. It became a founding myth, a narrative that the Romans used to explain their origins and values. The story has been told and retold over the centuries, serving as a symbol of unity, adaptation, and resilience. Artists, writers, and historians have drawn inspiration from the episode, creating works that celebrate the courage of the SABINE women and the strategic vision of Romulus. However, the rape of the SABINE women also raises ethical and moral questions. Does the end justify the means? Can the union of two peoples, so crucial to Rome's success, be seen as a conquest or a violation? And what was the real role of the SABINE women in this process? Were they victims or active agents of change? These questions lead us to the next chapter of this fascinating narrative, where we will see how the relationship between the SABINES and the Romans evolved after unification. How did the SABINES, now an integral part of Rome, face the challenges of expanding and consolidating Roman power? And what was the impact of this merger on the development of the Republic and later the Empire? The story of the rape of the SABINES reminds us that nation-building is a complex process, full of contradictions and challenges. But it also shows us that, even in the midst of chaos, it is possible to find paths to unity and growth. What do you think? Was the rape of the SABINES an act of necessary violence or an early example of creative diplomacy? What if the union between the SABINES and Romans, so celebrated after the rape of the SABINES, had not been as harmonious as history suggests? Imagine a scenario in which, despite the initial fusion, tensions between the two peoples resurfaced with full force, triggering a series of conflicts that would test the resilience of Rome and the identity of the SABINES. How did a people who helped build the Eternal City end up fighting against it? And what do these clashes reveal about the complex relationship between identity, power, and survival in the ancient world? After the symbolic unification promoted by the rape of the SABINES, Romans and SABINES lived a period of relative peace and cooperation. However, this harmony would not last forever. With the fall of the Roman monarchy and the establishment of the Republic in 509 BC, the power dynamics in the region changed dramatically. Rome, now a republic, began to expand its territory and influence, and the SABINES, who had maintained a certain autonomy, found themselves faced with a dilemma: submit to the growing Roman power or resist and fight for their independence. The SABINE resistance was not immediate, but grew as Rome advanced into neighboring territories. The SABINES, proud of their heritage and traditions, were unwilling to abandon their identity in favor of an expansionist Rome. They had contributed to the formation of the city, but now found themselves treated as mere subjects rather than as equal partners. This tension culminated in a series of armed conflicts, in which the SABINES demonstrated their military skill and determination. One of the most notable episodes of this resistance was the Sabine War, fought in the early 5th century BC. During this conflict, the SABINES, led by charismatic and experienced leaders, managed to inflict significant defeats on the Roman legions. Their familiarity with the mountainous terrain and their guerrilla tactics made them formidable adversaries. However, Rome's numerical superiority and growing organization eventually prevailed. Despite their bravery, the SABINES were gradually pushed onto the defensive, losing territory and influence. But Sabine resistance was not limited to the battlefield. They also fought to preserve their culture and traditions amid increasing Roman assimilation. The Sabine religion, for example, continued to be practiced even as Roman gods dominated the official pantheon. Sabine rituals and festivals were celebrated in secret, keeping the flame of their identity alive. This cultural resistance was in many ways as important as the military one, for it ensured that the SABINES were not completely absorbed into the Roman machine. A fascinating example of this cultural preservation can be seen in the figure of Actius Tullus, a Sabine leader who became legendary for his fierce resistance to Rome. He is said to have led a revolt in the late 4th century BC, uniting Sabine and neighboring tribes in a last-ditch attempt to stem the Roman advance. Although his rebellion was defeated, his courage and determination inspired future generations, becoming a symbol of the struggle for freedom and autonomy. Despite military defeats, the Sabines did not disappear. Instead, they were gradually integrated into the Roman Republic, but in a way that allowed them to maintain some of their identity. Many Sabines became Roman citizens, holding public office and contributing to the administration of the state. Their military expertise in particular was highly valued, and many Sabines served as commanders in the Roman legions. This integration, however imperfect, ensured that the Sabine legacy continued to influence Rome for centuries. However, the Sabine resistance raises a crucial question. What does it mean to preserve identity in an ever-changing world? The Sabines fought bravely to maintain their culture and autonomy, but in the end, they had to adapt to a new reality. Was this adaptation a defeat or a victory? And how can we understand the relationship between resistance and integration in the context of expanding empires? These reflections lead us to the final chapter of this fascinating narrative, where we will see how the Sabines, now fully integrated into Rome, helped shape the future of the empire. What was the impact of their traditions and values on the formation of Roman identity? And how did the Sabine legacy survive, even when their political independence disappeared? The story of the Sabines teaches us that resistance and adaptation are two sides of the same coin, and that true victory can lie in the ability to influence the future even when the past seems lost. What do you think? Was the Sabine resistance an act of heroism or a battle lost from the start? What if, when we look back at the height of the Roman Empire, we are actually seeing the quiet triumph of the Sabines? Imagine a people who, despite having lost their political independence, managed to profoundly influence one of the greatest civilizations in history. How did the Sabines, now fully integrated into Rome, help shape the future of the empire? And what does their legacy tell us about the power of culture and identity in a changing world? By the 3rd century BC, the Sabines no longer existed as an independent political entity. Their lands had been incorporated into Roman territory, and their leaders now served as citizens of the Republic. Yet far from disappearing, the Sabines left an indelible mark on Roman society, contributing in ways that went beyond simple assimilation. Their traditions, values, and expertise continued to influence Rome, helping to shape its identity and destiny. One of the most notable aspects of the Sabine legacy was their contribution to the Roman army. The Sabines, known for their discipline and military skill, brought with them techniques and strategies that were adopted and adapted by the Roman legions. The phalanx formation, for example, which the Sabines had perfected, became a key part of the Roman military arsenal. Furthermore, the Sabine emphasis on rigorous training and military hierarchy influenced the organization of the legions, which would become one of the most efficient and feared forces in the ancient world. But the Sabine influence was not limited to the battlefield. Their religious and cultural traditions also left a profound mark on Rome. Sabine gods, such as Quirinius, were incorporated into the Roman pantheon, and Sabine rituals, such as the feasts in honor of Mars, became an integral part of the Roman religious calendar. This fusion of traditions enriched Roman culture, creating a unique identity that combined elements from different peoples. A fascinating example of this cultural integration can be seen in the figure of Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome, who was of Sabine origin. Numa is remembered as a wise and pious ruler who introduced religious and social reforms that helped stabilize the young city. He established many of the religious rituals and institutions that would become central to Roman identity, including the office of Pontifex Maximus, who oversaw public worship. Numa's wisdom and its connection with the Sabine traditions show how the culture of these people was essential to the development of Rome. Furthermore, the Sabines contributed to the formation of the Roman elite. Many Sabine families, such as the Claudii and the Valerii, became part of the Roman aristocracy, holding important positions and influencing politics and society. These families brought with them values and traditions that helped shape the identity of the Roman elite, creating a culture of nobility and public service that would be fundamental to the success of the Republic and the Empire. However, Sabine integration was not a process without conflict. Despite their contribution, the Sabines often faced prejudice and discrimination from the Romans, who saw them as a conquered and inferior people. This tension between assimilation and identity is a recurring theme in the history of the Sabines, and reminds us that cultural integration is a complex and often painful process. But despite these challenges, the Sabine legacy survived. Their traditions and values continued to influence Rome, even as its political identity faded. Sabine discipline, inherited from their warrior ancestors, became a defining characteristic of the Roman army. Their religiosity and devotion to the gods enriched Roman spirituality, and their contribution to the Roman elite helped create a culture of leadership and public service that would be fundamental to the success of the empire. And here a question arises. What, after all, does the triumph of a people mean? For the Sabines, victory came not in the form of political or territorial independence, but in the ability to influence and shape one of the greatest civilizations in history. Their legacy reminds us that the true strength of a culture lies not in its ability to resist change, but in its ability to adapt and influence the future. But the story does not end there. If the Sabines were able to leave such a profound mark on Rome, what does this tell us about other cultures that have been assimilated by empires throughout history? And how can we understand the role of cultural identity in an increasingly globalized world? These reflections bring us to the end of this fascinating narrative, but they also open doors to new questions and discoveries. The story of the Sabines is, above all, a story of resilience and adaptation, which teaches us that true victory can lie in the ability to influence the future, even when the past seems lost. What do you think? Was the Sabine legacy a silent victory or an inevitable assimilation? The answer may surprise you. And so we come to the end of the incredible journey of the Sabines, a people who, even without founding Rome, helped build one of the greatest empires in history. They were warriors, leaders, priests, and above all, agents of change. Their story shows us that even when a people seems to disappear, their legacy can live on, influencing generations and shaping the future. But here's a secret. The story of the Sabines is not just about the past. It makes us think about how different cultures meet, mix, and create something new. And this happens to this day. So, pay attention, because the next time you hear about Rome, gladiators, or even great empires, remember the Sabines. They are there, hidden in the details, showing that even the smallest people can leave a gigantic mark on the world. So, did you enjoy discovering how the Sabines changed Rome forever? Then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories like this. Until the next adventure.